All right. I think we are now streaming live.
Excellent.
Andrew Dorazio, welcome to the Living Off Rentals podcast.
Honored to be here, Kirby. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. It's great to have you. We should have done this a long time ago, actually. It's funny, like when you have friends that you talk about this stuff all the time with, you don't even think that about, having them on the podcast. All of a sudden I'm like, well, this is crazy. Why haven't I had Andrew on? The guy's got over a decade worth of experience investing in all these different markets, all these different types of properties. So I think the community is really going to benefit from your knowledge today.
Awesome. Well, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And for the listeners who aren't familiar with Andrew, if you've never met Andrew, so we actually kind of share a similar path and a similar background. Not only that, we both went to West Point and served in the Army, but we both started our careers in the beautiful city of El Paso, Texas, right after graduation. And it's a city where you can do pretty much everything there is to do in about 6 months. And then the closest city next door is about an 8-hour drive. So it was a great place to start. But it was good to start. I mean, from my experience, it was kind of a good testing ground in terms of real estate investing, because had I been stationed in Hawaii, which is where I went from there, because I was stationed there in 2005 is when I showed up. So,
sure.
Right as the market's peaking, and if I had gone to Hawaii and started there, one of these other coastal markets, I would have been crushed.
Your life could have been completely different.
Yeah. So, I know you were there kind of after the downturn, and I think it was still probably a good place to get your feet wet. So I want to hear more about that, and then all the other markets and types of investing that you've done over the last 12 years. So
sure.
If you want to just start off with kind of filling in some of your background there and how you got started with real estate investing.
Awesome. So I guess the journey begins back in Port Chester, New York, where I grew up. I call it the cradle of civilization. I go back there quite a bit, but I always had this kind of entrepreneurial drive as a kid. My dad owned a business, and I used to work with him a lot, and with him and my brother. And at some point in time, I kind of grew tired of it, and we worked at the bakery, and I used to associate the smell of bread, which is like an amazing smell. I started associating with my dad or brother, like yelling at me, and which is great, which is fine. I miss those days, but I decided to start a landscaping business when I was 14. Me and a buddy, best friends, were back home, and we're pushing our lawnmowers around. And after about 4 or 5 years, it turned out to be a pretty decent sized little company that I was able to sock away some money, that I was ironically able to use down the road for some real estate. So that's kind of where the bug hit. And my dad had invested in some real estate in our town, and always kind of talked about the great aspects of it, and how you make money while you sleep, right? It seems so easy. But little do I know there was all the ups and downs of it over the years. But went to West Point, as you mentioned, graduated in 2007. I got an economics degree, and I picked El Paso. I went air defense artillery, and I picked El Paso because of a few reasons. I was doing some research on real estate, and it was a warmer market. I wanted to think about some other business opportunities. I liked car washes. I wanted to buy a laundromat. Like, I had a lot of weird ideas at the time. And
that was while you were at West Point. You're thinking about this.
Yeah.
Wow.
I started
incredible.
I started digging in. That's actually when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, which I know is. I know you mentioned it yesterday in your goal setting session. I mean, that was a pivotal. Geez, I can't speak today. That was that was an amazing book for me. Life changing, I'd say, and just getting my mindset shifted to buying cash flowing assets and whatnot. So I started to look at different ideas I could have if I got stationed down there, and what I would do on the side, basically. And of course, like, reality hits you in the face once you get on the ground. And I got stationed there, and I did in fact build a laundromat, and I did start investing in real estate. But we'll keep to the real estate story a little bit better. But I picked up a 4-unit about probably 4 or 5 months after I got down there, and a condo, both of which I still own today. This is '08. I bought these. And the ironic thing at the time was like the world was melting down around us in the downturn, but El Paso was kind of interesting. It had appreciated quite well from '03 to '07, and quite well for down there, right? It's not the same as say Hawaii or San Diego or where some of my friends were stationed as well. And so the thing was, though, everything was, all the other big cities around us were taking big hits market wise. And El Paso, they just announced a BRAC closure list, and First Armored was moving to Fort Bliss. So there was this talk of 30,000 troops and their families coming. What was that going to do for the economy? So builders just started building and going further and farther east, as you probably remember. And so the market was actually doing pretty well there, but not really going up, not really going down. So doing well was pretty stagnant, right, at the time, whereas everything else across the country was going down. So it was a quite interesting time in El Paso. But I knew I wanted to get into some investing, so I bought that 4-unit. That was the first deal that I did down there. I didn't live in it. Looking back, with house hacking and all these fun terms that Bigger Pockets has come up with over the years. I didn't really know left from right with real estate investing. I read a couple of books. Literally, I was at Bowling 2 in Benning, and we were sleeping on cots out in the field, and I was reading Foreclosures for Dummies. I can't make this up.
Nice.
This is '07, I think, and I didn't know anything. So that was the form of research I was doing, and trying to understand how to pick up property. But I bought an on-market 4-unit for $190,000, and we'll talk about this deal a little bit more down the road. But it's been the gift that keeps on giving. That one property, very very pivotal. Jesus, very pivotal purchase for me.
Cool.
But from there, I did 6 years active duty, similar to you, and spent all my time there with one deployment overseas. Great experience, a lot of different positions, and left as my battalion assistant operations officer, and then got out and started working for Ernst & Young as a consultant in 2013, supply chain consultant, and been doing real estate investing on the side ever since. I didn't do much between '08 and let's say 2014 or so. I probably missed some opportunities during that time period, but I really started ramping up the investing piece, and it saved a lot of cash between those two time periods, and it actually helped me out tremendously from 2015 onward. So between then and then, I was probably able to, or then and now, I've been able to pick up another 40-something units slowly. I always talk about the grow slowly strategy that I've had. So over the last 5 or 6 years or so, I've picked up another 40 units, plus some other syndication investments that I've done along the way as well.
Wow, that's incredible. I want to get into some of the 40 units that you've picked up since then as well. Sure. I know it's a pretty diverse spread of different types of deals. The thing that kind of stood out to me as you're explaining that is you're somebody who kind of always is thinking about business opportunities and brainstorming. And like you said, you're reading Foreclosures for Dummies. It's not like you had it all figured out, but you're like, I'm going to figure it out as I go. And you're still buying properties. And I think that's kind of what I did as well. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I think a week later I put in a offer on my first house, and I think it's smart for people to educate themselves, but it's also, you take moderate risks and start to get the experience as well. And I think that's what you did. And it's paid off for you. So
Sure.
That's really cool. So what, I guess, so you invested in El Paso, you bought some properties there. You said there's a gap from '08 to 2014, and then you started buying again. So I guess from 2014, is that when you got out of the Army?
So 2013, I got out and
Okay.
I moved to Chicago,
Okay.
where I'm still now with my wife and now 2 kids. So Yeah, so I got out, 2013, drove to Chicago from El Paso with a trailer and my wife and 2 dogs at the time. And we were about 3 blocks away from her parents' house now. So it's awesome, but it's sometimes like an episode of Everyone Loves Raymond, I like to say.
Nice.
But it's worked out really well, especially with the kids. But yeah, so once I moved back to Chicago, the wheels started turning again. Okay, what can I do here? Where do I want to invest in next? What's my next move? And I saved a decent amount of cash. I don't want to get too far ahead, but the next thing I did was I actually refinanced that fourplex that I bought in El Paso. Remember I said I didn't know much about real estate investing, so I put a little bit too much money down probably on the place, which ended up being okay. And I did a cash out refi and pulled out a pretty significant amount of money for my next purchase. So, I was debating whether Chicago was the right market since it was my new backyard, or if I should go back to the well in El Paso. And my next move was actually buying an apartment building back in El Paso again. So I partnered with 2 other grads, my classmates, 2 of my best friends, and we bought a 11-unit apartment complex down in El Paso. So that was the next move I did, and that one had a lot of ups and downs as well at first. And now we're finally 3 years, we're 5 years in or so, and or 6 years in, and we're in a really good spot now. But it took a while to get there. It was a rough one, a rough purchase, but there's a lot of things to unpack on that one.
Well, maybe let's jump in. Maybe let's start with that one,
Sure.
since we're talking about it. So you said that one was you've owned it for 5 years.
Yeah, actually, I guess it'll be January of 15 now. So in a month it'll be, or a couple of days it'll be 6 years.
Okay.
And we bought this one. We didn't, I never bought anything that big before, but it turned out it was easier, or as easy to buy an 11-unit apartment complex as it was to buy a 4-unit or a single-family home. In fact, I think it was easier. There was less scrutiny on the people involved in the deal.
Yeah.
And it was a mind-blowing experience. I was like, they're not asking for every piece of rent on this other property and all these other documents. And so that's something that I've taken with me a long time. Is okay. I like larger buildings now because they're lenders will look at the deal sometimes more so than the people. They still look at the people and they'll do their global review or whatever, but it's more about the deal working than it is about the the people and their W-2 jobs behind it backing it, right? So they want the bank wants to know they could take the building back and have it be a profitable enterprise for them. So we bought this building and we made a few mistakes along the way, right? It had 11 units, and I went down there to do a tour of it, and we did an inspection, all that stuff, and we only got in 11 of the units, right? We only got in 10 of the 11 units, and I didn't think anything of it at first. They're like, "Oh, we can't find the keys to this one." There's all these weird excuses, and again, my ready, fire, aim. I was a little naive, and I said, "Okay, that's fine. I'm sure it's just like the other 10 because they were all exactly the same. It's a big U-shaped building." And turns out there was a guy that was living there, had a fake lease. He was a hoarder, had, I guess, books and magazines stacked to the ceiling, was living off of a potbelly stove in there for some reason. And he was burning the books and magazines to keep warm at night. And so it was a big mess. So I used the same property managers down there that I did for my 4-unit. And it turned out they weren't really cut out for a bigger property like that. 4 or 5 months in, I was trying to give them the benefit of the doubt and call them every day, what's going on. And I was a little hyper aggressive with it. And I just wasn't getting the answers that I liked. So I started interviewing other property managers, and I could talk for hours and hours on what makes a good property manager. But I finally found the right fit, and this guy is still my property manager. And I recommend him to everybody that I talk to under the sun down in El Paso. I wish I can clone him in every other market. But
what was different about him? Just like a few of the key things.
So in El Paso, there's a couple of things. One, you kind of got to speak Spanish if you want to be in that business. And so he was a Mexican American gentleman, and he was a big dude. And he's like one of those tough but fair guys. So he didn't take any crap from tenants, and I don't mean to say it in a bad way, but like, the first thing, as soon as we bought that place, we're getting stories upon stories. Oh, my brother's in jail, and I can't make the rent this month, and so we ended up having to evict like 6 of the 11 places within the first year alone. But Carlos went in there. He was very hands-on. He got things done quickly. There was no hidden fees. There was he wasn't in cahoots with any contractors, which I've seen in other places. So, if something was going to cost $500, it was going to cost $500. There was no added, tricky fees on top of it. And he was honest, and he was there. He was present, and he got the units filled with good tenants, and that was what was important to me. And so I remember it was Thanksgiving, almost a full year later, we had to replace the roof. So we were out a lot of cash at this point, between the vacancies and people not paying rent and the evictions and all that. It was Thanksgiving that same year. We finally got everything rented and everybody paying for the first time. So it took almost 11 full months. And he texted me the night of Thanksgiving. And he was like, "Hey, we got the last unit rented, and December we're going to be full building worth of rent." So it was like an amen moment for me. And but it took a while, but after that everything was, I'd say, smooth sailing. There were some bumps along the road during the process, but we've worked to add value to the place as much as possible. We've sub-metered some things and did renovations where we could, and to help kind of boost rents. And in reality too, another big thing that I learned there is there's a price point between $0 and whatever dollars that someone's going to be willing to pay for rent, right? So sometimes property managers will sit on a dollar amount for too long. Sometimes you gotta keep moving prices to get somebody in there quicker, because a month of rent is tough to recover from. 2 months of rent is even harder or 2 months of vacancies is even harder to recover from, right? So, him and I worked out a strategy of, okay, every week we were going to drop another $5 or $10, and these are not expensive units; they're $500 a piece, right? So, we started dropping prices until we got to the right point where market was okay. I'm going to move from here to there at this price point. So. And that's how we filled the units, and we got quality tenants in there, and it worked out really well in the long run. And now it's a cash cow for me. We just refinanced with the same bank and lowered our rate, and it's working out really well.
That's great. So, what are the general numbers on a deal like that? Would you buy it for, and what's it rent for?
So it was on the market for $499, and I went down there and I toured like 10 or 15 properties with my wife, and some of them scared her, right? Because there's some areas of El Paso's great, but there's some parts of town that like people are living a little bit in a little bit of dumpier properties, and I didn't really want to get into that business, so we went with a kind of like a C+, B- type of property, right?
What part was this in?
So this is right next to what's the hospital there? Beaumont. Beaumont. Yeah. We're like literally across the street from the old World War II, old World War II barracks, but not far from there. You're on Dyer, and it's a little bit rougher, right? So, but anyway, we're looking at a bunch of properties, and this was this was really the one I liked. We liked the most. Even my wife liked it, so I was like, okay, that's a good sign. Get her bought in on something. So, sorry, what was the original question here on this one?
The numbers. So it's listed at $499.
Yeah, $499. Thank you for keeping me honest here. So $499. So I was like, all right, we're gonna throw some numbers out here. So we put in a $380 offer, I think, on this place. That was the number we liked, and they countered at $400, and we had a deal. I was like, okay, that was pretty easy. And it turned out there was some fraudulent type stuff with the leases. I didn't do enough. I didn't know exactly what due diligence to do. I'd done some research, and we had these people sign what they call estoppel certificates down there, which say, okay, I pay this much in rent. I own these appliances, and I've received no special kickbacks in association with this rent, right? Sometimes landlords will juice their numbers by saying, hey, I'll give you 2 months free. But your new rent level is actually $600 or whatever. So
yeah, some
of these things were not in fact true. But roughly it was bringing in about, so there's 7 2-bedroom, 1-baths, and then 4 1-bedroom, 1-bath. So at the time, the leases were saying that the rents were about $550 a piece for the 2 bedrooms and $450 a piece for the 1 bedroom. It was a little overinflated. The math is, roughly, I think it was like $5,500 or so a month in gross rents. Over time, we realized it was probably market, and the actual rents were probably closer to $500 for the 2 bedrooms and $400 for the 1 bedroom. So once we got all the bad people, the bad tenants, the bad actors out, and good paying tenants in, that's where we leveled out. And we've slowly started to increase, over the years. Now we're probably about 510, 515, very small increases. Normally people say, oh, $5 increase isn't a lot for people. But, in this case, some of these folks are, lower income. We didn't want to risk somebody leaving over a small dollar amount, right? So I'll choose keeping tenants longer. Now, most of these tenants have been there for over 3 years. And that's the beauty of the El Paso market. In my 4-unit, even I have a tenant still that I brought in 2008. I signed his first lease. So he's been there 12 years. So you get a lot of that down there, and a lot of folks are good, hardworking folks, and they take care of the property. So I think once we got the place stabilized and brought in good tenants, I think it's a great asset for us over the years. But so we bought it for $400. It's probably worth about $500 now, or $480, somewhere around there. It's bringing in probably close to $4,800 or $5,000. So we're almost at where they advertised they were 6 years ago or so. But we're probably cash flowing about $1,200 a month. What really kills you in Texas is the real estate taxes, right? So that's been a problem. And they've been going after apartment buildings. I have a lawyer down there that's helped kind of try to lower our real estate taxes. And this year they went up about $1,000. That's the only downside to that market is the real estate taxes are kind of high relative to the purchase price.
Yeah. I didn't even realize just how similar our experiences are, because I have a 11 unit as well. Nice. That was kind of how I cut my teeth on commercial property as well. Mine's in Indianapolis, but it's 7 2-bedroom, 1-bath, and 4 1-bedroom, 1-bath. It's so crazy how it's like, sounds like a very similar building. The rents are a little bit higher. It's in Noblesville, which is kind of a higher end suburb, or a nicer suburb of Indianapolis. But I had to do a full gut rehab. So I got it for, close to nothing because it needed absolutely everything. And then we rehabbed it and stabilized it. But very similar experiences with property managers. I think I'm on my 4th now. And I've learned so many lessons with that building along the way. It's I recommend it to people. I think it's a great way to start income, because if you had to learn those lessons on a 100-unit building, that's $5 million, it's going to be tougher pills to swallow.
For sure. Magnified by quite a bit. Yeah. And that's kind of why I like the 5 to 20 unit type mid-size small apartment buildings, right? I think there's good financing options available for them. Usually mom and pop owners that had them previously, so there might be some mismanagement. And it's a fairly lower risk way to sink your teeth commercial wise. It's a good transition point though, because I think at this point in time, I started looking at other markets, and I had some friends that started investing in the Cleveland suburbs. And there was a LeBron James was there, and he was running the economy, of course. It seemed like the numbers really worked, and everyone gets this big Rust Belt excitement when they see Ohio rental numbers, right?
Yeah.
So they passed the bigger pockets 2% rule. We're looking at properties that were like $75,000, and they were bringing in like $1,800 a month rent.
Wow.
And it almost seemed too good to be true. And for a lot of cases, it was. Some cases, it wasn't. So I partnered up with a couple guys that were in my battalion in the Army and also went to work same company as I did. So we re-linked up and said, okay, one of them was from this market. This is probably 2016. So we started buying duplexes and triplexes in a couple areas outside of Cleveland, in University Heights, Shaker Heights, and Cleveland Heights. And we were doing it in a bunch of weird ways. We were taking out personal loans for these. We were raising debt from friends and family to pay for the down payments or to pay for them in cash and then refinancing them. And this is around the time I met you too, I think, because I remember talking to you about maybe trying to wrap some of these up into a blanket loan once we picked up.
Yeah.
But we ended up buying 7 or so of these 2 and 3 units. And, and this is where we went through, same thing as you in Indianapolis. We went through about 4 property managers before we settled on the right one.
Yeah.
Everybody asked me for recommendations there. I finally have a good one there, but it took a long time. And we've cycled back and forth between people, and it was a rough go. I think the tenant base in the Cleveland suburbs too is a little bit tougher to find really, really quality tenants, at least when we found, and it's much more of a tenant-friendly state than or city rather than say Texas or El Paso specifically. So we've had some troubles with tenants leaving bed bugs and, evictions that lasted 12 months. So we couldn't get people out. And now we have we've still struggled with certain things. We got a tenant in there that has made the other 2 tenants fearful for their life. So they've both moved out. So we've kind of seen everything under the sun, and now they're not paying rent on there. So we got a 3 unit now that's got 1 person living in there that we can't out because of the eviction moratorium, and they know that, right? So they know that we can't do anything about it. So we've had our struggles there. So now we're starting to fix up and sell some of the properties. The market actually is pretty strong there, and people are like buying these duplexes left and right. So we're going to start fixing them up, kicking out tenants, and not kicking out. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. As tenants leave, we're starting to fix up units. And put them on the market. So we actually think we're going to end up getting like a 40 to 50% return just on the sale of some of these. But yeah, it took a lot. Cleveland is I always advise people, the numbers always look really shiny in Cleveland and in Ohio and some of these Rust Belt markets. And I don't mean that as a endearment for me. But there's a lot of other factors to take into consideration there. So I always warn people. I said, okay, yeah, it looks really good on paper. Just be careful with some of these C-class neighborhoods and these cities. So anyway, that was my next move. So we picked up like 16 or so units over the course of like 2 years there. And, my brother was invested. I had a bunch of other folks, and we're all mostly veterans that had got in. So it was pretty cool working with all those folks. And some of them are doing really well. Actually, our best property picked up for $72,000, and now it brings in like almost $1,900 in rent. And
Wow.
And our general contractor actually rents out one of the units from us, and so he fixes everything and takes care of the place, and he does all our other work there. So
Nice.
so that's been a pretty, that was a pretty good move for us, and he's been helping us kind of transition some of these units for sale. So.
Yeah. And for people who haven't, or maybe they're like exploring where to invest, like you said, those numbers look super compelling, but I think there's a direct correlation between the property management, the intensity of the property management that's required, and the cash flow numbers that you see.
Correct.
Almost always that's the case. And so, I was buying quite a few properties in the south suburbs of Chicago, between 2016 and 2018, 19, and very similar numbers to what you're saying. I found that I really needed to be the manager on those to make those go right, because property managers typically, the way they work is they want to get a tenant in there, get it rented, and then they follow up as needed, or on a quarterly, monthly basis, whatever it is, they'll check on the property. But they don't want to have direct communication constantly with the tenants. They don't, there's the tenant
or the
base.
owners for that matter.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it requires a lot more hand-holding. It's a lot more intensive, just because the tenant base is a lot more challenging in a lot of ways. So, so I'd say for people who are listening to this and hearing this story, like, don't get lulled in by these numbers that, look so unbelievable, like they're too good to be true. If you're just like looking for something that you can kind of collect mailbox money, or it can be turnkey, because that's probably not going to be the case. Yeah.
And just another layer of advice there, like talk to somebody that's in that market first, and not somebody that's trying to sell you something, right? So I talked to a lot of property managers, and they were like all roses and sunshine about the market, right? Mm-hmm. And that was the wrong answer. I should have talked to people that were actually investing there on the ground, not realtors, not property managers. No, if I'm a realtor too, so no offense to anyone in that industry. It would have probably saved us some headaches for sure, and at least I would have gotten some honest feedback on the properties we were looking at. So that would be just find somebody in that market that's doing it and learn from their struggles. If somebody's thinking about investing in Cleveland, come talk to me. I'll tell you everything there is to know.
Yeah. So having had the El Paso experience and the Cleveland experience, then what was your next move? Like, what did you realize from those experiences, and how did that relate to what you did next?
So I kind of did two things in parallel. So, a couple of years ago, I linked up with my good friends, Joey and JD Modrek, who I think are both part of this group as well. It was right around the time we were doing our Chicago meetups too. And we wanted to start buying in Chicago. It was in our backyards. So we started looking at properties there. And simultaneously, I was partnering with somebody else to look in Nashville for sure. So let me talk about Nashville first, because I think that was an interesting story how we got to where we are today. So my partner and I, my good friend Chris from work, we were trying to figure out, okay, where is a good rental market for Airbnbs? And so we took a very kind of data or analytical approach, and we went to AirDNA and we bought some data. And we said, okay, they have a tool on there that allows you to kind of compare and contrast purchase price data versus, projected revenue numbers, right? And it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but AirDNA every, few seconds or minutes or whatever is pinging against every property, every Airbnb and VRBO property, and collecting that data to try to figure out what price point certain days got booked at, right? So they could give you, somewhat of an idea of how much revenue a certain property generated for that year. So we started looking at this data, and we said, okay, let's look at the top 5 markets, and let's find one that has kind of the most bang for their buck ratio. And we honed in on Nashville, partly because my wife had gone for like 7 bachelorette parties there in the span of like a year. And I was like, friends. Yeah, I was like, something's going on.
Or a few friends that are getting remarried a lot.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, something's going on here. And I was like, I want to investigate this a little bit. So we dug into Nashville, and we found one zip code that had the highest revenue per dollar of purchase price, right? So we found a realtor down there, and it turned out this guy was fantastic, lucky. And Nashville was very particular about their zoning rules when it comes to short-term rentals. So our funnel was very thin, right? So we started off, we got all these single-family properties there, but we needed them to be in this zip code, so that funneled it down, and then we needed to be this type of zoning on the property. So ended up being like 5 properties on the market. We found one that was a new construction, and we bought it. And it turned out I went down there. I brought my whole family down there to furnish this thing, and it was in like a transitioning neighborhood in Nashville, about 1.5 miles from downtown. The third night, I just dropped my wife off at the airport. I was going to stay for another few days to get everything finished. There's like 3 gunshots in the backyard, and it turned out there was a train that ran like kind of behind us, so it was kind of like a thoroughfare for some troubles. So I shouldn't, I want people to stay at my place, right? So I don't tell this story too often. But I was like, oh boy, I made a big mistake. But I remember going out that weekend, and I was on one of these rooftop bars, and I was looking down, and Broadway was just like sprawling with people. And I said to myself, this might be the best decision I ever made. It was insane how many people were down there. So long story short, we got that one set up. We used, I shouldn't say this too loudly, but we used the vacation home loan for that property. So we got a 10% down loan on the property. It's a vacation home technically, right? Mm-hmm. So we purchased this for $369, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, or 2.5 bath rather. And we got it set up to sleep 12 people. And so we had bunk beds in one room, and we kind of worked, we looked at other properties. We did a number of things just to figure out how to get this thing set up properly. My wife picked out all the furniture and all the decorations, and she did a fantastic job with it. And it turned out phenomenally. And that property now we've fenced it in. We've resodded the backyard. We did a little bit extra to get the curb appeal up, but it's on a cul-de-sac. It's like a great little piece of area in this zip code that's now every third house is getting knocked down and rebuilt. So
wow,
it's a very very hot neighborhood now. Restaurants are coming in, and so I think it's going to end up being a good purchase for us. But we did the first year we did quite well on that. The first full year was 2019. And then 2020, as we know, was a disaster. We picked up our second property in the same zip code right down the street, new build. We realized that once everybody started to figure out, okay, we got to look for the zoning stuff, the properties started to dwindle. So that 5 became 0. So, excuse me, we started to look for land that was zoned properly. So once you found the land, then you contact the builders that own it or whoever owns it to say, hey, what are you going to do with this? So about 3 months after we bought that first one, we found this plot of land and called the builder, and we said, hey, what are you going to do? What are you doing with this property? Oh, we're breaking ground next week. So we literally put it under, one of the units under contract before they even broke ground.
Wow.
Which was helpful for them because then they can show oh, hey, bank, we have interest in these properties. They're, So it turned out the first 3 that went up, I bought one. Joey, my friend Joey, bought another one, and my friend Mario bought third. So we owned the first 3 of 14 in this little development that was going up, and that place proved to have a lot of challenges as well. But yeah, 2020 hit, got a tornado, took out power for 2 weeks. Then coronavirus hit, so we lost 100% of our revenue in April, May, and then we were running about 50% from June through, I don't know, maybe October. Now we're back up at about 75% of revenue numbers, but it took a long time. So we took a massive hit for both properties, 0 revenue for 2.5 months, along with some other crazy stories that happened. But that long story short, Nashville ended up being a wonderful market where we survived the virus and the tornado, and now this crazy explosion on Christmas, and we're poised to do really well in 2021. I don't think everybody fared as well, but it turned out to be a fantastic investment. I learned a lot in that process too, because we self-managed the entire time, me and my partner. So we didn't hire a management company, so we didn't want to give up.
Even from Chicago.
Yeah, from Chicago. Both my partner and I were in Chicago, and we put systems in place. I give a lot of credit to my partner because he's good at a lot of that stuff, and we put a lot of systems in place to get it so that it was kind of a smooth operation. It took a little bit of time, but yeah. So that's Nashville in a nutshell.
All right. So doing you did single families, you did 4-unit, you did 11-unit in El Paso, you did small multifamilies in Cleveland, you did some deals in Chicago, and then Nashville, you did the short-term rentals. So of all those experiences, which market and which type of property do you think was the best that you would want to focus on in the future?
Yeah. So I think I'm moving forward. I'm taking myself in the 2 directions. And I told you this earlier, but I have some focus issues sometimes, right? So I'm trying really hard. I got my goals.
Good entrepreneur
up there.
Oh, nice.
But I'm trying to focus is one of my big things that I want to hone in on this year. But I really so in Chicago, my backyard, I want to keep focusing and invest in multifamily properties in Chicago. So we like the 5 to 20 unit spaces I mentioned before. That's one of my major focal points. I think we're in good neighborhoods in Chicago, right? We're in your B plus, A minus type neighborhoods, where we're focusing in on trying to find value add projects, places that just need a little love, might have been mismanaged. Hopefully off market deals. They're a little bit harder. They're struggling to find these buildings that you can't just do your normal list source, send out mailers and stuff. You can, but it's not as you're not as successful with it as can some of the other markets. But we like Wicker, Logan, Ukrainian Village, Noble Square, those type of that little kind of Fulton Market District, that area. And so
even with COVID, you still feel pretty positive about this area.
So here's what's happening in Chicago, at least from my perspective, right? So I'm a realtor here too, so I try to keep a little bit of a pulse on it. Filling units has been tough, right? I mean, there's people are working from home, people are moving back to mom and dad's places in the suburbs. We had a couple of vacancies this year in our existing units, and it took it normally takes 3 days at most to fill these units. And at the beginning of COVID, we filled everything really quickly, and then all of a sudden, we had a vacancy pop up and it took 6 to 7 weeks, right? So, wow. And a couple of price drops in there. So stuff that I experienced in other markets that I never experienced in Chicago is starting to happen. So the crazy thing is there's people still selling apartment buildings that want pre-COVID prices. And I'm like, you can't. So we're looking for deals at this point, right? And some people want to sell stuff and move it to other markets. I'm still bullish on Chicago. There are other areas that I like, a little bit more. But Chicago backyard, I want to keep buying stuff as long as the price is right. So I think it's a great opportunity, right? With vacancies, longer time to fill vacancies. Apartment owners are going to realize eventually that some of these buildings are just not selling, right? There's stuff that's on the market that's been on the market for 9-10 months now, because they're priced ridiculously, right? So I think once we've had a couple accepted offers and at some lower prices. We got a few things. We got a place under contract right now in Fulton that we're hoping to take down in the next couple of months. That's been a rocky road, but anyway, so that's one of my focal points. Within that specifically, this is another piece of advice I like to give a lot of people. We focus a lot of times on operations and the minutia of real estate investing, but I'm really going to start focusing my time on 2 things: finding deals and raising capital, right? So, we're going to be syndicating these properties in Chicago. And again, they're only going to be deals that have either value add opportunity where there's under market rents or places that we're getting for good prices, right? So, we're providing some type of value to a purchase, right, or a partner in the deal. So I'm going to focus on finding these deals and the other piece being raising capital. So, what I call the $1,000 an hour task, right? So, and try to outsource and stay away from the little stuff. The other area that I want to focus in on is I like the Southeast. So I picked up some units in Charleston. I picked up some units in Jacksonville, which I'm pretty bullish on right now. So
long term or short term units? So
in Charleston, short term is impossible unless you live there.
Okay.
We're trying to figure out some ways around it, but there's a lot of rules in place. They have a short-term rental task force where they look for illegal short-term rental units on there. But it's a big force market. But we picked up a duplex there that we're renovating, and going to do a cash out refi on.
Okay.
Or so once finished. And Jacksonville's like the Wild West. There's no rules for short-term rentals. I wouldn't say there's no rules. The rules are very lax. We are in a historical district of Jacksonville that we're buying properties now. Me and a couple partners are raising capital for that type of stuff and rehabbing properties, which that's probably the least experience I have. You and I have had conversations about this in the past, but you're the rehab guru, right? And I'm just dipping my toe in this.
Are you working with the DaCostas down there?
So I have invested with them on a deal. I'm not working with them on the other stuff that we have. So we have 2 single family properties that we've picked up in the last couple months. Both deals need some work. Both deals are in historic neighborhoods. Both we got at really discounted prices. So
yeah.
I'm very bullish on the Southeast, though. I know there's a lot of companies that are moving jobs there. There's a lot of development that's going on in Jacksonville. And I love what the DaCostas are doing down there as well. So that's kind of my 2 focal points going to be, the Southeast and Chicago multifamily deal.
Sounds like there's some sub-focal points in those 2 focal points. So I'm going to challenge you on 2 there.
Yes. Yeah, there's probably 8. So.
No, that's great, man. The DaCostas were actually on a previous podcast episode, and they explained kind of the Jacksonville Wild West and how there's a ton of opportunity there, and it was pretty intriguing and compelling. So I think that's interesting. That I kind of again, our paths are very similar, and
sure.
We both got into similar types of properties, and then we started doing short-term rentals probably around the same time a few years back. And I've really transitioned into short-term rentals. I've kind of fallen in love with the cash flow and just having property. I'm kind of OCD when it comes to the properties that I rehab. And when I rehab it and then I do a walkthrough 6 months later, and a long-term tenant is really making it their own and living in it hard. It's tough for me to
tap dancing their way to the bedroom every night.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's tough. So the short-term rentals, the benefit is, you got a cleaner going in there once or twice a week, and it's staying in pretty tip-top shape, as long as you keep up with the maintenance and stuff. So it's interesting to hear that, you're still pursuing both and you still like both. And I think it always kind of goes back to, like, Gary Vaynerchuk always says you got to know your DNA. And that's like the most important thing. And I think it's so true with rental properties, because there's so many paths you can take and there's so many that will work. But as you've pointed out, like, there's pros and cons to each. And so you got to know what really drives you and what you're going to be comfortable with. So I appreciate the breakdown. I mean, we could talk about this stuff for a long time, I think. There's so many. Are there a few, like, maybe key lessons learned that you might want to share, or maybe, just some advice that you could provide?
I'll tell a quick Nashville story, though. We got the second place set up in December of 2019, and we had cameras. We had a ring doorbell in the front and a camera in the garage, and it was still an active construction site right around. They were still building 11 of the 14 units, but we had the whole place set up, ready. We were days away from launching, and I got an alert at 11 p.m. I was in Delaware for work, and I got an alert that there's motion in my garage, and I said, "Oh, this can't be good, right?" So I'm like hoping maybe it's a mouse or something. And, no, some dude walking out my TV, right? So and turns around, like, blatantly looks at the camera, then walks out, right? And now, again, these are some of the issues you have in transitional neighborhoods, right? And of course, active construction sites, there's a lot of people looking to steal copper or appliances or whatever they can get their hands on sometimes. So it turned out they had busted into the lockbox in the back. We usually try to keep some type of redundancy of entry, right? In case the internet goes down and you can't use the keypad or whatever, power goes out. We wanted to have a key on site. So they found it. And even though I tried to do my best to hide it, and they busted it open and then just waltzed right in, right? And then they hopped over the balcony and stole Joey's TV as well. So luckily, though, I travel for work a lot. So I was on the road, and that Thursday, instead of flying home, I flew to Nashville, replaced the TV. Turns out, if you have a Chase Business credit card, they will refund any stolen items that you purchased with that credit card. So we got fully refunded, not from insurance, so our rates didn't go up, but the credit card refunded that. So
That's
There's still a
incredible.
speaker. Yeah, there's still a speaker and 2 TVs.
Did you have to show them like the video to prove that it was stolen?
No, we had to show the police report. So
Mhm.
we called the cops. Obviously, they resecured the house, and I went down there and got it all straightened out. And the lesson learned there too is that like even in good markets, sometimes bad things happen. And so we got a security system after that too. We got we upgraded our Ring package to add in the motion sensors and force sensors and stuff. And it's come in handy. We've had no issues since then, knock on wood. But yeah, so having security and cameras on the outside is pretty critical. We've also busted up a lot of parties too during COVID. There was a lot of like locals throwing parties and stuff, and the cops got a little more stricter on those things, and they were actually shutting down Airbnbs. So we wanted to be really, really careful with those things. So anytime we saw like a whiff of like young kids coming in there, we're like, all right, we got to get them out of here. And Airbnb has been pretty helpful with that. But
yeah, how do you handle that out of curiosity? If you do see the makings of a good party.
Yeah, JD will be a good person to talk to on this. He's seen a lot of craziness working at his previous employer. But so the last one we encountered. So what we've done is we've realized some patterns, right? So if there's a local person booking, somebody from even anywhere in Tennessee, typically, and then one night bookings, those are your 2 red flags, right? So we've stopped all one night bookings and we've stopped all local people booking there, unless they have a compelling story, right? Like, and they get on the phone with us and talk to us, if you don't. So, and if they have no reviews, that's the other third red flag. No reviews, local. One night booking. So we've stopped renting to all those folks because every single time they proved us right.
Yeah.
Right? So that was preventative measure number 1. But once we did figure out what was happening, I remember one time somebody put a sticker over the Ring doorbell camera, and we could still hear the party. And so at first cops wouldn't really do anything, right? And I know that changed with COVID. Our first party that happened, we kind of just had to wait it out. We had several messages to the, but they're most likely not going to respond. Airbnb didn't really do anything. Like you could change their access code, but like, they're already in the house. So there's not really much you could do when you're not there. Right.
Yeah.
So unless the cops got noise complaints, we did call the cops and file the report. But the second time around with COVID, the cops came and asked everybody to leave, and they all did. Right. So, because they were throwing a party, in violation with the COVID laws, rules, or whatever.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's helped us out pretty well. But we've kind of just become more preventative, right? It's harder to deal with on the back end once there is a party already started. We're trying to just stop them from ever happening in the first place. So that's been our best bet with it all. I know some people put in like noise monitors and stuff, but like even when people are in there, it's hard to get them out once they're there, right? So it's easier to prevent them in the first place. So that's what we're trying to focus on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. That's helpful because that's kind of along the same lines what we do. I haven't seen a major party, but there's definitely signs, and it's so helpful to have the doorbell cameras and some of those things too that can.
They try to sneak them in the back sometimes.
Exactly.
We catch that now. And a couple, I know we're running out of time here, Kirby. There's a couple things I wanted to bring up that just from lessons learned, right? As I mentioned before, focus on $1,000 an hour task. That's where I'm going to spend most of my time this year. Don't step over dollars to pick up pennies, right? Mm-hmm. One of my biggest pet peeves is when people, speed is important sometimes in this game, and you can get 40 different quotes on stuff and try to save a few dollars, but you wasted 2 weeks and a vacancy time period, and you've already lost money by doing that, right? So I've tried to just focus on speed, and sometimes the cheapest option isn't the cheapest option, right?
Yeah.
Real estate's a team sport, right? You can't do everything yourself. You can't do everything well, right? So I've tried to surround myself with experts that are better than me in everything, and leverage them as much as possible. And 2 more points: cash is king, right? There's been opportunities where I had cash and others didn't, and I was able to capitalize on opportunities that other people couldn't. And and the last piece is a weird one, but I started master keying my multifamily buildings. And it's actually saved me a lot of time. A weird pro tip that we just did our building in Chicago, and now we have a single master key that can get into every unit that we don't give out to anybody, but we have it in case of emergency. But it makes it so that everybody can get in the front door with their house key, and then they can get into their unit. But it makes it so that you're on like a key system with a locksmith, so that they can go to the next. If somebody moves out, it's easy to just get make the lock, transition to a new key that doesn't work for the old one, but still works for the front door. This stuff works when you have common areas and stuff, but it's been a very helpful process for us. Key management is an annoying thing of this business, right? Like a rat's nest of keys from buildings over there, and I don't even know if they work anymore. So the master key system has just kept me organized, and it also helps when you have to get like contractors in there. And at the last minute, or if units are vacant and you need to show them, like it's good to just have a key that works, right? And it will work always. So
absolutely.
Anyway, my last pro tip there.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. That's great advice. For the Airbnbs, I've gone to the Nest lock, or I forget who they partnered with to
August, or I have August I use. Yeah, exactly. So, but it's been so key, no pun intended, to do that because constant with the longer term rentals, it was keys are being lost and need to be replaced, and then tenants lose them, and so it's that's great advice. I haven't looked into the master key system, well, awesome, man. So many great nuggets here. You've had a long journey in real estate, and it's kind of still just getting started. I know you have big plans that lie ahead. So, all these lessons for people who are kind of just getting started, they don't go away. Like that's the cool thing, is that it's all cumulative. So you've learned so many things along your journey. And from this point forward, all the decisions, all the lessons learned all accumulate to just making better decisions on future projects. And, some of the pain, it's not all loss, because it's going to relate to more gain on the next deal. So hopefully some people who are listening to this can take some of those lessons that you've learned the hard way into account, and they can learn them from you instead of going through it themselves, and make better investing decisions themselves. So really appreciate you taking the time today to share some of your wisdom. Yeah, thanks, Kirby. Thanks for having your Living Off Rentals page and podcast here. I think it's a great resource for the community, and I always say, you're not only one of my favorite real estate guys, you're one of my favorite humans in general. I think you're a great person for sharing all this wisdom with everybody. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, buddy. So Andrew is a member of the Living Off Rentals Facebook group. So if you want to connect with him, you can join the group. Just go to Facebook and search Living Off Rentals. And also, what's another good way to connect with you? You want to share an email address or something? Yeah.
So you can email me at andrew.dorazio2007@gmail.com, or my phone number is 914-420-2881. I'm glued to this thing pretty much all day. My wife hates me for it sometimes, but anybody can call me, text me, email me. I'm pretty easy to find. So
cool. Awesome. Well, thanks again, man. And we'll talk soon.
Yeah. Happy New Year.
Thanks. You too.
All right. See you, Kirk.